Premier League clubs are set to stage a vote to ban clubs from loaning players from teams under the same ownership, as far as we understand here at talkSPORT. Now, it comes amidst reports that Newcastle are monitoring former Wolves midfielder Ruben Neves as a potential January loan signing. Of course, we know why. The club's looking for a short-term replacement after Sandro Tonali's gambling ban. What is this? Is it a loophole that needs closing? Should the Premier League work to close this avenue? What's going on with this?
I think it's a terrible victimisation of Newcastle United. Now, of course they should work.
Well, there is that argument.
Well, it's a stupid argument. And it's no more a relevant argument than it was when financial fair play adjusted to the introduction of Sheikh Mansour and Manchester City and the need to look at things in different eyes once you've got circumstances that come up in front of you. Look, the argument about multi-club ownership has always been a flawed one as far as I was concerned, because they've just let it go. They've just allowed it. UEFA have allowed it to happen. The RB argument has been won. So that's the precedent about the nature of multi-club ownership. And the competitivity and the jeopardy argument has subsequently been negated by people suggesting they will only buy clubs that don't play in the same tournaments, and that can be developed under majority and minority shareholdings. And then you've got the other argument, which is the one that they're probably trying to close now, which is, what is the point of financial governance if you're going to be able to find ways around it, like dumping players into Saudi that get them off your balance sheet from the point of view of being able to get out of a transaction, and then Saudi loaning them back to clubs in this country and finding a way around financial fair play. Yeah,
but you didn't have a problem with Chelsea offering long-term deals, 8-9 years, to players. Yeah, but you said that was sensible, but that was prudent business.
But that's comparing apples to oranges.
Yeah, but other people called it a loophole.
No, it's not a loophole.
It is a loophole.
But it's not a loophole. The fact of the matter is, the governance in football said you value players by the length of their contract. It didn't say how long their contracts have to be.
So why have they changed the rules on that?
So what Chelsea did, because certain people didn't like it, and so they changed the rules.
Yeah, because it was a loophole.
Well, it wasn't a loophole.
That's why they changed it.
I mean, you can sign someone on a contract for however long you want. And just because Chelsea was spending a hell of a lot of money and wanting to capitalise their balance sheet differently in terms of the contract depreciation, so people sign players on 2-year contracts. Then should there be a minimum contract rather than a maximum contract? Because there isn't, is there? I'm only going to sign a player for a year. Well, no, you wouldn't do that. So why does it make it 5 years? Why was 5 years the denoted amount?
No,
because that's traditional thinking.
Chelsea were able to spread out a billion quid's worth of transfers.
Okay, so if one club's policy is to only sign players on a 3-year contract and another club's policy is to sign them on 5-year contracts, the club that signs them on a 5-year contract has got an advantage over the clubs that sign them on 3-year contracts. It was horses for courses, and what they did was they decided to put a marker in the sand saying, actually, we're going to change the whole rule system, and we're going to say that you cannot sign players. The accountancy principles are behind this. The accountancy principles are you value players on the length of their contract and you depreciate them. So Chelsea went, that's fine, I'll put our players on 8-year contracts. So what's the problem with it? They didn't like it, so they changed it, and Chelsea have to get on with it. In this instance, you're trying to put financial fair play in to stop actually breaching rules, to find a way around rules. Chelsea didn't find a way around the rules. They used the accountancy principles. They were the rules. They abided by the rules. They didn't find a way around them. They abided by the rules.
It was a creative way around FFP. That's why they changed the rules.
Those were the rules. They abided by the rules. The contractual position of players is you devalue them over the contract term. Just because someone says you sign, everyone else puts them on a 3-year contract, and Chelsea decided to put them on an 8-year contract. So what? That's the game. That's how they can manage their affairs if they want to. And
Wait a minute, you said they abided by the rules. There were no rules. That's why Chelsea could do what they did.
No. The rules of you're understanding my point. The devaluing of players is based, or the amortization and the depreciation is on the contract term. Nobody said that the contract term could be 3 years or 4 years or 7 years or 8 years or 27 years. They said players are depreciated over the length of their contracts. So Chelsea went, that's fine, then we'll put them on 8-year contracts because we want to keep these assets for 8 years. And everybody went, don't like that.
Look at the messages, Simon. This situation in Newcastle, message after message after message in front of us saying Watford have done it for years. Watford have done this for years.
Yes, but
look what they did. Lads, Watford did it for years. Loan players from the other teams in Italy, like Udinese, because they own them. Now, this is exactly what Newcastle are doing. And
forever and a day.
You've never had a problem with this before. Is it because it's Newcastle you've got a problem?
I don't think it's anything to do with Newcastle. I think it's to do with the rise of Saudi. And it just happens to be a timing issue that Saudi have now become a pro football league that people can dump their players in, left, right and centre, and create opportunities for themselves to get out of a particular problem.
But Chelsea, why shouldn't Newcastle do this? If they can't play Tonali and they can get Ruben Neves in,
But it's not just Newcastle, is it? It's anybody.
Why not do it? Because they're Saudi owned.
Because what we're joining up the dots and saying is because they're interested in Ruben Neves, all of a sudden 20 Premier League clubs are going to get together and say, oh, because of Ruben Neves, because we're seeing Newcastle poke their head above the parapet, we're not having any more of that. No, don't be silly. It's to do with the rise of Saudi.
Dan Ashworth at Newcastle knew this was coming.
Did he?
The current rules and regulations, says Dan, say there is nothing to stop it. But there's potential that the various different organisations will look at things across related parties and what you can do to acquire players at fair market value.
Good. So they should.
So it's fine then, is it? They knew this was coming.
You pivot. Everything is about new information. Do you stay with the same outcomes when you've got new information? Up comes the Saudi Pro League. Up it comes with inflated perspectives of what it's going to pay, from salaries to transfer fees. We know it. We've seen it. Right? We've argued about it. We've looked at the ridiculous levels. So all of a sudden, football shouldn't adjust. I've said to you since the get-go, football will have to adjust to what the Saudis are attempting to do. So here's an adjustment.
So football's got to put rules in place because it's Saudi. But it's gone on for ages at Watford.
Football has
so
got
no one had a complaint then.
But that's a different dynamic because we're not talking
same.
about. No. Hang on. Are we talking about £50 million players being sold by Watford and Udinese? No, we weren't. We were talking about players like Forestieri coming into Watford as a result of loan deals with Italian football clubs that they owned. Slightly different. But they're now closing a loophole. You might make the argument, and so will Newcastle fans, it's because of Newcastle. And there may be, because Newcastle are under Saudi ownership, that there's a concern as a result of it. And that ultimately the Saudi League is being used by clubs like Chelsea to dump players into that league to get out of financial obligations because maybe some of the investment capital in Chelsea comes from Saudi. All of these things need a Premier League and a set of governance from UEFA to be able to make sure that the financial obligations that football clubs are being asked to comply with isn't get-aroundable. For want of a better word.
I think this is the elite getting together and trying to close a loophole because a Saudi-owned club like Newcastle is trying to get around.
Well, you would because
this.
You're a Scotsman and you're a victims complex. The point of it is, it's nothing to do with that. It's more to do with the principles of adapting to the circumstances of new information. And unfortunately, like Man City, everyone says Man City. It's not fair. Chelsea got away with it for years. Roman Abramovich came in 2003 and set the place on fire economically. And we had David Dean saying they parked their tanks on our lawn firing £50 notes. 4 years later, Man City comes in. And everyone goes, "Oh, it's because of Man City." It's because new information gives you new decision-making processes. So and democratically, they can vote for it, can't they, or against it?
Well, exactly. So how would you vote? Premier League clubs are to stage a vote to ban clubs from loaning players from teams under the same ownership, like Newcastle under Saudi ownership.
I would vote
Would you ban... To stage a vote to ban the clubs from loaning players from teams? Would you stop Neves going to Newcastle?
Yeah, I wouldn't make it that micro. I would vote for this as a step in the direction of actually going after multi-club ownership. I would say, I'm going to vote for this because I want to see the authorities start to shut down the idea that multi-club ownership is the right model for football clubs, given the competitive nature and given the way that it'll be used to abuse the idea that we want to put governance in the game. Right. So yes, I would vote for it.
You would vote for it?
Yes.
And to stop it being
and specifically to stop Newcastle, of course.
Of course.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.